Hey, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Douglas Lapsley, one of the contributors to King Cafe. So, hey, thank you for tuning in this evening. Man, it has been a long week with all of our brothers. Some of them are still out on mission right now. And we got another brother. He'll be hopping in out there doing community work like we always do. So, I'm going to be your host today, Douglas Lapsley. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is we're going to do a recap of last week, not last week, but the last episode that we talked about in the King's Cafe. So this is the second installment of this show under, Real Talk with Dr. Ann McDaniel. A couple disclaimers is that by all means, if you need any type of psychotherapy services, by all means, reach out to your local communities for mental health services. Even for marital issues, reach out to your local licensed married family therapist. One thing that we do on this show is we promote licensed, qualified, credible workers in those fields, the subject matter experts, and not just giving you some backdoor opinions. We actually will direct you with the proper resources to professionals in reference to some of the things that you're going through on a psychosocial or even a marital aspect. I myself, I have a master's in psychology with a specialty in child and adolescence. On top of that, I have a certification from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in suicide and cyber prevention and organizational leadership. And right here, I have my brother. I'm telling you, this guy always is on tour. I'm going to keep saying it every time we meet, but we're always on the phone. We have brother Khalid Scott, who is also a licensed clinical social worker and a psychotherapist. And when I say this guy has been on tours and talk shows, man, if he's not on a tour or on a talk show, he's actually in the office doing psychotherapy. And if he's not doing that, he's spending quality time with his daughter. If he's not doing that, he's in the gym. So that's a couple of things that he does. I do the same thing. With the community that I work with, also being a member of the 100 Black Men. That's just a plug for those who are in the local community, for your youth, for your sons and for your daughters, get them plugged in with the 100 Black Men. Is a very good program that we have here in the Savannah area. And you can just go to the 100blackmensav.com, 100blackmensav.org in reference to youth. Also, we have some cool programs with the college people. For those of you who are looking for quality psychological counseling in the area, also take a look at Dr. Ann McDaniel and her counseling services. All right, so yeah, there's a lot of cool references that you can use. But just doing a recap of our first episode. In our first episode, we talked about an emotional affairs. We talked about what that was, and we talked about relationship integrity. This segment is going to be a little bit more serious because from the last time we all got together as men and was talking to you, the listening audience, things have gotten a whole lot more serious, a lot more tense, and I would also say a lot more dangerous when it comes to relationships, when it comes to marriages, when it comes to family, when it comes to mental health. A lot of things have gotten a lot more serious. So this is going to be still an open one. If you have questions, by all means, we have Dr. Ann McDaniel and Dr. Mum. See, we got doctors everywhere. See, so they're also behind stage. So by all means, if you have some questions, you can text it to them, 912-650-9960. Text them the whatever questions that you have or whatever comments that you have. We will try to answer them the best that we can. If we can, by all means, we will get back with you with the proper resources to give you the answer. We're not just going to pull something out of the air. That's not what we do. All right, as you can see, he's on the road. I'm still in my office. That's how serious things have been for the longest. But let's start back with our very first episode. We talked about emotional affair. And one of the things that we defined in the emotional affair was is that it is a non-sexual connection that can act as a liaison to emotional and sexual infidelity. That's what we were breaking down last week. And when I think about a liaison, um, I think about it in a cooking aspect because, just like Khalid, when we do ribs, right? Sometimes we put on those pork ribs, we would put mustard on it. And mustard is a binding agent. It's a binding agent where if you leave the mustard on it, you let it sit and it opens up the pores of the meat. So then you can put your seasoning in it and cover it up, and then you put it on the grill. So an emotional affair is just like that. So when you are having a non-sexual connection to another person, you are actually acting as a liaison. You're actually putting something in the fibers of a relationship that is non-sexual that can lead to an emotional or sexual infidelity. That's what I think about when we do an emotional affair. You're actually seasoning something because you're rubbing something on an agent, and that's how that goes. So the emotional affair again is a non-sexual connection that can act as a liaison to an emotional and sexual infidelity. I got my notes here, so I just wanted to make sure I catch everything. The second thing we talked about in our first episode, we also talked about relationship integrity. And with relationship integrity, we also define that as a moral and ethical principle in the confines of the relationship. Moral and ethical principles in the confines of a relationship. That's what relationship integrity is. Basically, keeping to a code of conviction. And we talked about some of those things of what is your code of conviction when it comes to relationship therapy or relationship integrity. There is relationship therapy though. And one of the aspects that I brought up was this, that if with your cell phone, if you can't walk in your house and put your cell phone down and walk away from it, and you got your woman in the house, there's a problem. There's an emotional affair there, and there's a violation of relationship integrity. If you cannot do that, there is an element of emotional affair or relationship integrity. Because there's nothing in my phone that my wife should not be able to see. Bottom line. So we talked about that, but this episode, we're going to keep it quick and we're going to let Khalid do his thing. Is we're going to be talking about boundaries and expressing your needs effectively. And one of the quotes, we talk about is this. Here's a quote by Dr. Henry Cloud. I've really been into his books heavy the last couple of weeks. Well, pretty much for the last month. And here's one of the things he said. The fool tries to adjust the truth so he does not have to adjust to it. The fool tries to adjust the truth so he does not have to adjust to it. So, what are you fooling yourself about when it comes to marriage and relationships that you don't want to adjust to when you know the truth? Another quote he made was failing well means ending something that is not working and choosing to do something else better. Failing well means ending something that is not working and choosing to do something else better. So those are the two things taking a look at. And again, at the end of the episode, we'll also have references for you to keep. We'll do a recap of some of the references that we left from the first episode and some more references. So you're going to have tons and tons and tons of books that you can have in your own home that you can be taking time doing a little bit of your own independent study and just really gleaning from that knowledge. What you know is limited, but what you don't know is limitless. That's why you got books. So boundaries, Khalid, what are some areas when we're talking about boundaries in relationship, what does that really mean?
When I think about, can you hear me good?
Yep.
Okay, when I think about boundaries in relationships, it just tells your partner and it tells you what are some of your negotiables and non negotiables.
Mm. That's
right?
good.
And that's right then and there, and that should be established on the first conversation you have on the phone with them when you're meeting them, right? So that you
Mm-hmm.
set a time for a relationship. Now, these non-negotiables and negotiables, they have to be steady and consistent. Meaning, I can't say, oh, you know what? I do not. My non-negotiable is you. If you cheat on me, I will not stay. And then they cheat on you and you stay. Because once you break your non-negotiable, it's over with. It's over with. And
Mm.
people have a tendency to test you on your boundaries, right? To see, do you really mean it?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's you have to really adapt that mindset, mean what I say what I mean. And remember, you establish boundaries from lessons you've learned from probably previous relationships.
That's
You
good.
know,
That's good.
you learn because you want to be in a relationship where you help meet their needs and you get your needs met. And then one of the things that and I always say this about relationships, go in already in love with you.
Wow. Go in
Relationship
already in
already in
love with
love with
you.
yourself.
Wow. Wow. That's good.
If you go into a relationship and starving and thirsty, it makes you vulnerable to that person.
Mm.
It makes you very vulnerable to that person. And then people will fail you every time.
Right.
Remember, nobody can fill your home like you can. No one. And then you
Mm.
set people up and you try to do it the other way.
Mm-hmm.
You set yourself up. And boundaries are good to have because again, it establishes your needs, wants, and desires. And then also, you want to have their boundaries, where there are non-negotiables and negotiables.
Mm.
And then you can make a concerted or you can make an educational determination that is this what I want? Is this what I want? Because
That's
you have a
good.
right to get your needs met in any relationship, and even if it's a family relationship, friendships. You know what I'm saying? And especially when it comes to romantic relationships, which tend to be a relationship that's near and dear to your heart and soul, you deserve
Mm.
to get what you want out of it, but the other person also deserves what they deserve to get.
Wow.
And then, yeah, and then also with the boundaries, it just again, it just sets the parameters for a healthy relationship, especially if it's reasonable boundaries.
Mm. That's good.
For me, I
I
like
like that.
communication. I like communication. So if we get into a disagreement, I don't need to shut down or walk out. I want you to sit down and to discuss the issues with me, so that
Right.
I know what's going on, you know what's going on, and then communication is the best prescription out here.
Communication is the best prescription out there. That's another
Absolutely,
good one.
yeah. Because it
Mm-hmm.
cures everything. Because now you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah. I would
What you're
add
dealing
on
with.
and say effective communication is the best prescription. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that. I like what you said about being steady and consistent when it pertains to your boundaries. And what made me think when you said steady and consistent is almost like parenting. Because then you went on to say that it will be tested, your boundaries will be tested. We did that as kids. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You go test the boundaries a little bit. You gonna get
Absolutely.
right up to the edge. Just like curfew. You testing that boundary of that curfew. Can I come in right at 10 on 1 when I'm supposed to be in at 10 and see what happened? And the powerful thing about boundaries is that we're all governed by it. And here's a good example of that. You're driving on the road, but all of us drive on the road. Watch this. Um, we got our yellow and our white lines. Those are our boundaries.
Right.
So boundaries, uh, can be seen and they can be unseen. That's what I like about that. But they're governed. They're governed that way. We see boundaries. Some we see and some we don't see. That's why communication is so important, because you're recognizing where those boundaries are. Another cool thing about boundaries is that they're not walls. They're boundaries. They're not walls. And
Yes,
sometimes we conflate a boundary in relationship with putting up a wall with the person that we love. And a
right,
boundary is not a wall. What a boundary is, it just lets others know that you exist apart from them. That's a boundary.
yes,
But, because when you exist apart from them, that means that you are in control of you. So again, we're governed by and defined by boundaries seen and unseen, but they're not walls.
right,
Having a boundary means I exist apart from you. Because when you was talking about when you go into a relationship, you have to be already in love with you. That's your boundary.
yes,
That's your boundary,
yes,
because if you going in thirsty on the other person, that person you don't know, they may or may not take advantage of that. If they recognize a boundaryless person can easily be manipulated, but also a boundaryless person
right,
can manipulate others, because they think since they have no boundaries and you do, that you should capitulate to their boundarylessness. So therefore, they can be destructive in what you already got built. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, boundaries
absolutely.
are not walls. It just lets other people know that you exist apart from them. Same thing with parents and kids. People really think that you exist. Kids really think that you exist solely for them. That is not true. No,
Right,
I am a human being. You're a human being. I do not exist totally for you. God gave me a brain and a heart for a reason. Ain't just for you. It's also for myself. I got goals and dreams and aspirations. But when it comes to relationships, I think we also have to be aware of that with our partner, with our spouse, with our loved ones, that yeah, they're not walls. And emotional distance, sometimes when we deal with emotional distance in the confines of boundaries, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, an emotional distance is a temporary boundary to give your heart the space it needs to be safe. That's what an emotional distance is when you're dealing with boundaries. So once you cross another person's boundaries, or you violate their boundaries, they'll go into an area of emotional distance. How many times have you sat in a session and you've seen couples, and I know, we have, where it was like, we're just not to he or she are so distant from me. I can't reach them. We're growing apart. That type stuff. Emotional distance. Some of it is due to hurt. So they're protecting themselves because they are no longer safe being close to you emotionally. So they become distant from you. So what I found interesting is that, there's a few statistics along with that. Do you know that the United States has the sixth highest divorce rate in the world, with 40 to 50% of married couples filing for divorce? That's according to the United States Consensus Bureau. United States has the sixth. The United States. You see, I didn't say the black community. The United States has the sixth highest divorce rate in the world. Some of that's just due to a lack of not respecting the other person's boundaries, because that's what happens. All right. So with that being said, let me ask you another question pertaining to boundaries. Um, how can we set limits? And what I mean by that is we can't set limits on other people, but we can set limits on our exposure to other people. How do we set limits in our relationships? What does that look like when we're talking about boundaries?
But
should we set limits in our relationships?
right, so when you think about limits, it's the same thing as boundaries, right? And
Okay.
then when you hear limits, it sounds on the onset that wow, that's that's not being able to be free. You
Mm-hmm.
know you're holding me hostage. But again, even with limits, it's just saying that hey, I have a criteria in this relationship, and you will not break that criteria. I will not allow you to break my criteria because this criteria was established so that I wouldn't have to deal with heartbreak and heartache anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I need you to understand that I might give you some passes when you do some things consciously or unconsciously, but if you keep making a mistake, it stops being a mistake. You know what it becomes? It becomes a pattern.
Mm.
It becomes a pattern.
When you
First
keep
time you
making the
do it is
same, when
a
you keep
mistake.
making
Maybe
the
the
same
second time you
mistake.
do it is a mistake. First time
Yeah.
you do it is a mistake. The second time a mistake. After the second time, oh, I've taught you to treat me this way,
Mm.
and
Mm.
we can't have that. That's no
Mm.
good. It's not serving me any benefit. You know, it's
So
hurting me. It's breaking us down. It's hurting our family. You know,
right.
and we can't keep doing this because when you talk about the divorce rate, you know, it's destroying our community. You know, I have my mentees who are in their 20s and 30s saying, hey, coach, you know what? Looking at what you had to deal with your divorce and my parents' divorce and all my friends' parents and stuff, I don't know if I want to be somebody's husband.
Mm.
I'm thinking about it. I have a kid or two and just be in a committed relationship. Where if
Mm.
I got to leave, I can leave. That's no
Mm.
good. That's no good. I
Right.
remember when, and Doug, you probably can attest to this. When I was in my 20s. I was going to about 3, 4 weddings every summer.
Was you
Everybody
a wedding
was getting
crasher,
married. It
man?
was the thing to do to get married. But now, when I talk to my mentees and who are again in their 20s and 30s, they might have one wedding a summer,
Mm.
you know. And then I have two of my mentees in their 30s, early 30s. They both divorced now. One
Mm.
just got divorced and he's 33 years old. I got married when I was 33.
Mm.
My mentee got divorced at 33.
Mm.
So, and he's a quick dude. Yeah, yeah. And he's a
Right.
social worker. Tried to
Right.
do the thing, but the wife wasn't budging. So we don't even
Mm.
negotiate with each other no more. We want what we want.
Mm.
Now,
I'm
I'm getting ready to do a show on narcissism in relationships. I just did
right.
a show on mental illness and marriages. I mean, it's a lot. Marriage is tough enough, but when you have these other mental deficits in place, it's like, how can we win?
Right.
How can we win?
And
And
that
I want my 21-year-old daughter to get married, you know,
right.
and I want her to have valuable suitors who want to marry her.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, Doug. I'm trying to stay optimistic, man, but it's out here. It's rough out here.
I got you, man. And you said something else that is very profound when you were talking about those age groups. Because here's another statistic, uh, that's also by the United States Consensus Bureau and the Bureau of Labor Statistics that couples going through their first divorce are around the age of 30. Married couples between the ages of 20 to 25 are 60% likely to get a divorce. You want to know why? I'll
Right.
tell you why. It's lack of knowledge. Remember in
Yeah.
the first episode, I said it takes considerable knowledge to recognize the extent of your own ignorance. A lot of what's going on, of what we are seeing, is you have the wrong people with the right platform speaking to the masses about their dysfunction. And so they end up trying to explain their dysfunction in such a functional way to make it believable to the masses. But there's no knowledge there. And then they equate longevity of marriage with quality of marriage. No, no. Just because you have been married, I've been married 27 years. But on that same note, does that mean that I've been married 27 years that it has been that makes it quality? No, that makes it quantity. Longevity makes it quantity. What I do within that time frame makes it quality. And here's what I mean by that. When we talk about when we do psychotherapy, right? One of the main things that we do, even though we lost them, we'll get them back. One of the main things that we do when we're dealing with psychotherapy is we go back to the childhood. How many times have, in psychotherapy, we're talking to a 40 or 50-year-old person who then had issues from their childhood that have accumulated over time all the way into their middle adulthood. That's longevity. But in that time frame, there has been a lot of dysfunction that has compiled over time that has now manifested itself into a diagnosable criteria for a potential mental disorder. Now let's flip that over to marriage. You have some people who have been married 30 years, and it's just been 30 years of just straight dysfunction. Longevity does not mean quality. Longevity
Absolutely.
does, longevity does, and it breaks all the laws of what we've been told about marriage. Been married 27 years. But just because I've been married 27 years, that does not mean it's a badge of quality. Is what I have done in those 26 to 27 years that gives it substance. So it can either be recognizing strengths, building on your strengths, recognizing your weaknesses, acquiring knowledge, going to therapy sessions, getting counseling, reading books, making mistakes, recognizing those mistakes, effective communication, changing those things. Time after time after time after time after time after time after time. Now here it is, 26 years in. I'm chasing my wife around the house. Hey, come here. Trying to cop a feel every now and then. You know what I'm saying? I'm chasing her around the house after 26 years.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. That's right.
I
Well,
don't have to, just me arguing. I know, bro, you got some people who argue and fight and argue and fight and argue and fight and fight. Oh, but we've been married 30 years. Like that's a badge of honor. It's the substance of that time. You know what I'm saying? It's the substance of it. That doesn't mean that it's perfect, but if you've been arguing and fighting consistently for the last 20 to 30 years, that's not a marriage that I want to glean from. And that's why what you said about the mentees, they're like, if that's what it's going to be, no way am I going to get into that. And I don't
right.
blame them. And I don't blame them. Who in their right mind? Who in their right mind? I mean, let's really keep it a buck. Who in their right mind want to be married to somebody for 30 years and be arguing and fighting for 30 years?
Right.
Arguing and fighting for 30 years. Love and hip hop for 30 years.
Yeah.
Drama for 30 years.
Absolutely.
And then
Doug,
get on a platform. Yeah, go ahead.
I got to get ready to jump off right now, but I just kind of want to wrap up my end of this, my piece
Yeah.
about talking about the part on expressing your needs effectively. Um, you have to be brave enough. You have to have courage to tell other people what you need, want, and desire. but you got to already know it for yourself first.
Have the courage to
You got
tell
to
them
have
what you
the
need,
courage,
want, and desire.
right? Because some people may be able to handle your truth, some people may not. But it's got to
Mm,
be your truth that you stand on.
mm.
It's got to be your truth. I've learned over the years because I'm a Cancer and I'm a quintessential nice guy, and I typically bend and be flexible to meet people where they are. Because look what I do for a living, right? I got to meet you where you're at. But in my personal life, I get to say Khalid's needs, wants, and desires from everybody.
Right.
From my daughter to my mother to my best buddies to my coworkers and everybody else. Because again, what people do, people respect you when you're on yours.
Mm.
And then
That's
you
true.
teach them. You teach them. So when they say teach people how to treat you, that's for real.
Mm.
Because if
Teach
I
people
allow
how to
you
treat
to me, you're going to keep doing it. You're going to keep pushing that envelope. But again, if it goes back to what I say, I mean, and what I mean is what I say, and I stick to it, I stick my guns, and I'm even willing to release this relationship, you wouldn't believe, Doug, how many people have disagreed with me, walked away, but had to come back because they appreciate and value my consistency. Doug, if me and you are good friends and you're telling me I'm going to step out on my wife, I'm going to tell you as your friend, Doug, I was at your wedding. I bought you a $50 wedding gift. You're going to treat my sister-in-law well. Or me and you won't be, because if you cheat on your wife, you'll cheat on me as your friend. So I'm going to hold you accountable. And if that means you have to walk away from me, that's fine, but I'm still going to be the same person I am. When we start, there you go, integrity. When you have integrity, people respect it because we're not used to people having integrity anymore.
right. Right.
People
Right.
being flaky and inconsistent.
Right.
So, as I wrap up, I just want to say, guys, the God that we love, and I'm spiritual, the God that we love does not have us here on earth to be miserable, and especially miserable from the hands of other people.
That's true.
Have full authority of your life. Have full authority of your life. And then when you treat yourself well, other people will treat you fantastic.
That's good. Hey, peace and love, man. You be safe out there.
All right. See you all next month.
Yeah. Go ahead and go to your next
Take
talk show
care.
that you got. You need to
Uh,
send me the video.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah, that's my brother Khalid. I love him, man. I love him. And I really love what he said, having the courage to express your needs, wants, and desires. And that's really not a selfish thing because when we're in relationships, do we not want our needs met by our partner? Well, how will they know if you do not express what your needs are, what your wants are, and what your desires are? And those three do have a difference. So when you're expressing those things, there's one technique that we use when we talk about expressing, like how would you express it? Like as a man, as a brother, how would I express it? You use the I word. I mean, you use the I. I want to this. I don't like this. I desire this. I want this. But you also have to be articulate in how you express your needs. And that's the thing. Hey, I need to go to the store because of one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. Hey, I really would like for you, but you see how I keep saying, hey, you really do this. I really would like for you to do one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. You know what I want? Here's a good one. This is what I want for Christmas. We say that sometimes. This is where women say this. This is where I want to go. This is what I want to buy. So we know how to express our needs. It's just being articulate in what you want. So learning how to articulate our emotions works. It's not weak. It's actually strategic, and it's actually an art form. Learning how to express it. So yeah, expressing your needs, desires, and wants, man. I think that's cool. Here's another statistic that I also wanted to put out, and it really just shook me to kind of shook me to my core on this. Usually second or third marriages in the United States have a higher divorce rate. 60% of second marriages and 73% of third marriages end in divorce. All of these things that surrounding divorce, it makes me think about this, that love does not make a marriage work. Oh man, I know, I just boom. What they were like, what are you talking about? Love does not make a marriage work. What does that mean? It's the ingredient in a marriage, but that doesn't mean that it makes it work. Would you like an example? Okay, here you go. I like motorcycles. There's this particular motorcycle that I like. It has about a 457-pound dry weight. It's called a Hayabusa. I wanted a low drag with the extension on the back. Hi, man, that thing is nice. Look up a Hayabusa when you get a chance with the low drag on it. That thing is nice. Motorcycle. I love motorcycles. I love them. Ladies and gentlemen, I love motorcycles. Love them. I know everything about them, but I don't know how to ride one. So if I was to get a motorcycle right now and to hop on it, what's the likelihood that I'm going to tear that bike up? Probably highly likely. One, because I've never been trained on it. I don't know how to pop a clutch. I don't know how to really operate the base. I really don't know the basic mechanics of a motorcycle, but I like it. I love them. How many times do we do that in relationships? It's not that we don't love the person, it's the acquisition of knowledge. That's what makes a marriage work, the acquisition of knowledge. For those of you who are of the faith, of the Christian faith, what does the Bible say? Dwell with her according to what? Love? That's not what the Bible says. Dwell with her according to what? Knowledge. So the acquisition of knowledge is key in our relationships. Understanding what boundaries are and that they are governed, that boundaries are not walls. They're not. They're governed by the seen and unseen, but they're not walls. Knowledge is key. So guess what that means? Sometimes that means we have to pick up a book, pick up 2 books, pick up 3 books, pick up 4 books. Actually find some different type of, actually go to a licensed marriage family therapist or even some pastoral counseling who are credible and licensed in that area, and get some training, even when your marriage is working, acquiring more knowledge to keep it working, just like how we take our vehicles to get service. We don't wait for them to go bad to get service. We get the oil change so that the engine doesn't blow and it can keep running, right? Same thing. Knowledge in relationships. All right. Um, got some other fun facts in here. Well, they're really not fun facts, but they are facts. Here's another cool thing, though, is that the United States Census Bureau reports suggest that marriage and divorce rates dropped from 2009 to 2019. So that's only a few years ago. So even though the statistics go up and down, the institution of marriage is still sound. It's just those who choose to get into it with a lack of knowledge is why the statistics fluctuate. So, is it really the institution of marriage, or is it the acquisition of knowledge that the two enter into marriage, ignorant of the components of what makes one function? Probably could be that. There was a TikTok that my wife showed me, and this it was crazy, and it went viral. It went viral to where this man took this woman just on a date. He was taking it to the Cheesecake Factory. She didn't want to get out the car because he took her to the Cheesecake Factory. So he asked her what's wrong. And she went off on went off on the brother, off on the man, let me put it like that. Saying that I got dressed up all of this for you to take me to a Cheesecake Factory. And it went viral, and everybody has their own opinions on these comments. But when I looked at it, I asked this question: where was the communication? Because we talked about that a little bit earlier. Khalid said that communication is the prescription, right? So effective communication, thank you, is the best prescription. So if we're dating, what are your likes? What are your dislikes? What are your political views? What are your religious views? What's your views on our culture? What's your views of the black man? What's your views of the black woman? What are your views on marriage? What are your views on dating? What type of foods do you like? What type of foods don't you like? What type of restaurants do you like? What type of restaurants you don't like? If you were to go, if you was to go to a restaurant, where would be a nice place you would like to go? I wonder was that conversation had? Because I'm not just all going to throw it on her, and I'm just not going to all throw it on him. What I'm looking at is ignorance. So who is really influencing the masses? When you have the wrong people with the right platform, they influence the masses of their dysfunction and their ideologies. One thing that James Baldwin said, he said, the paradox of education is precisely this: that when one becomes conscious, one begins to examine the society in which he's being educated. Who's educating you on marriage? Who's educating you on dating? Who's educating you on this? How many books do you have for yourself to read? And I'm not talking about drama books. I'm talking about books that deal with effective communication, different type of psychological. You don't even have to be a psychology anything. But we do know that there are psychological components to marriage and relationships, right? The mind and behavior of the individual connecting with the mind and behavior of another individual, that's psychological. So at some point, there needs to be some type of psychological understanding of human behavior. That's how it translates with two people. But effective communication opens all of that up. And those are just some simple questions that we ask. Now, for those of us who have been seasoned in marriage, I also challenge you that we don't know everything. Okay, you've been married to your spouse for 25 years. You ain't been married to them for 26. Okay, you 48 years old right now, right, Douglas? Yeah, I'm 48. Okay, I've never been 49. I don't know what 49 looks like. I know what 48 looks like because I'm 48. But I don't know what 49 looks like. I don't know what 50 looks like. So I have to continue to educate myself in my season, right? So it's the same thing in marriage. Same thing with parenting. I have a 22, about to be a 23-year-old daughter. I've never fathered a 23-year-old daughter before. So I think I ought to gain some knowledge because she ain't always been 23 years old. So I think I probably need to educate myself on these things. So education is key. Even in the biblical context, it says this in the Bible. I can't remember the scripture, but is here's what it says though. It says wisdom is the principal thing. The Bible also talks about study to what? Show thyself approved, right? Even though it's talking about the word itself, it's still the principle still is sound because you study to show yourself approved on your job, you study to show yourself approved in school, you study to show yourself approved. That's why you have the income that you're making and that you're doing your thing out there, you're running your businesses and all of that. You had to study business to show yourself approved. Some of you were self-taught, but you still had to study. You still had to study an aspect of business in order to run a business. So you study your relationship, study your marriage. The way you do that is you acquire information. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. And I wish more of my brothers in here so we can have more of that dialogue, but that's okay because sometimes it just needs to be one on one and just talking about it. And I'm good with that too. I'm good with that too. Because as a brother, I have made some mistakes when it comes to marriage. And a lot of it was because I did not acquire knowledge. I didn't always know how to communicate effectively with my wife. Like the art of communication, active and passive listening. That's another thing I challenge you all to do. Active and passive listening. What does that look like? What is it? Study active and passive listening. I don't always listen now to respond. Sometimes I just listen to listen and I say nothing. But for years I was just listening to respond that it actually shocked my wife when I just started not listening. When I just started listening and wouldn't say nothing. She was like, I know you got something to say. I know you got something to say. I'm like, no, actually, I don't. I'm just listening to what you're saying. And then repeating back what she's saying, which is called reflective thinking. All right, okay. Then I'm like this. Okay, so when that happened, what did you think about then? How did that go for you? How did that work for you? And sometimes it be about me. I'm like, okay. So in that moment when I said this, how did that make you feel? All right, hey, I apologize for that. Not a problem. But here's why I said it because when you said this is how I made it feel. So now we're having a conversation about perspective when we say things to each other. Because the way you say it ain't the way I would receive it because I'm a man, you're a female. So sometimes our spouses speak to us as men with the preconceived notion that we are going to receive it the way you're giving it, but the way you're giving it is feminine. The way I receive it is masculine and vice versa. If I tell my wife something, I used to assume that she would receive it in masculine, but no, she received it feminine. And that also plays a role in our communication. We need to understand, that's how we understand each other. And when we communicate, you know what? Even though you said it that way, here's how I heard it. And she was like, sweetheart, even though you said it that way, this is how I heard it. This is how I perceived it. I'm like, okay, got it. So sometimes the perception in our communication also needs to be clarified. Perception in our conversation sometimes needs to be clarified. I'll say it again. Perception sometimes in our conversation needs to be clarified. Effective communication is the prescription, y'all. Just a lot. It's a lot of talking. Absolutely. But I'd rather do a lot of talking with my wife than to engage in emotional, what did I say? Than having an emotional affair, which is a non-consensual connection that can act as a liaison to emotional and sexual infidelity. Hello. I'd rather have all the conversations I need to have with my wife than to have it with some other woman. Relationship integrity, moral and ethical principles. in the confines of the relationship. There's another thing in expressing our emotions. For us men, it ain't weak to express your emotions to your wife. That's who you protect. So I'm good enough to protect you, but not good enough to express my emotions to you. I'm good enough to die for you. I'm willing to die for you, but not willing enough to tell you how I feel. Mm, might be something there. Why is it that I'm willing to die for you, but I can't express my heart to you? What's going on? Is it that you had your heart? You had my heart in your hand and you did like this? Is it that you made fun of me when I was really being honest when I said I was afraid? Even though I went out there and fought the forces of evil anyway, but I just had a vulnerable moment with my wife and told her, you know what? I'm afraid. I'm afraid. Let me give you a little dialogue. Let me explain that. About fourth or fifth time going on a deployment, and I'm just laying there on the couch, and talking with my wife. And I know time's wrapping up. I got you. And I just started crying. I wasn't like bawling crying, but just tears was coming out of my eyes. And she just said, "What's wrong?" And me being stoic, I'm good. I'm okay. And she was like, "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" And I just cried. I said, "I'm afraid." I said, I don't think I'm gonna make it back this time. I cried. I said, "I don't want to leave you. I don't. But that was one of the most vulnerable moments I've had as a man. Now, at that point, she could have done two things. Quit acting like a little punk. You've been on 3, 4 deployments before and you came back. What are you talking about? Or, hey, sweetheart, I'm gonna pray for you. I love you. I know how you feel. I feel the same. I feel the same way. But we gonna make it. Totally, totally different response. And sometimes that emotional distance that we talked about when it comes to boundaries, I think we need to ask our partner, husband and wife, have you told me something that I didn't take seriously that was a vulnerable moment for you that I didn't recognize and it hurt you? Time to have some honest conversation. I told you this episode is going to be a little bit more serious because the attack on marriage is intensifying. So what we need now more than ever is credible knowledge of how to navigate it because we got the wrong people telling young people who are the next generation of families some of the most gross dysfunction to where these young people are right. I ain't getting married and I wouldn't blame them. All the red flags that they're being told, especially for those of us who have daughters, with all of this foolishness going on, nah, you're gonna be a monk. You're gonna be Mother Teresa. What's going on? More knowledge for those, for the right people. The right people need the right platforms now more than ever to rival the ones who have the platform but who are the wrong people. That's what really needs to happen moving forward. But I'm done with that. I think that was a good episode. More to come from the King's Cafe with more of my brothers, but that's okay if it's just you and me. It's just you and me again. It's not a problem. Not a problem. We stay prepared. But again, not going to let you go without giving you some references, right? So I'm going to share my screen with you, and hopefully I have my references up. Let me see, where do I have it at? Yes, I have them right here. And let me put it like that. And I'm going to share my screen with you. And then we are going to call it. Wow. Come here, you. There we go. Present, share my screen. Let's see. There you go. Sharing it. And boom. Remember from the last episode, we had, these were ones from the first episode that we had, Couples Connect, where you can actually ask some substantive questions. Remember, effective communication is the prescription. For our men who are dealing with emotional incarceration, we got Battle Cry. That is a solid brother, and that is a solid book. The Art of Productive Disagreement, I always recommend this book. Talks about how to have a productive disagreement. But now, these are the two books that I'm currently reading. Trust, knowing when to give it, when to hold it, how to earn it, how to fix it when it gets broken in life and in business. And this one, Please, Sorry, Thanks. Those are two other references for today. All right, so hey, we had a good time together. Appreciate everybody coming out. You all be safe this evening, and we will see you for our next King's Cafe episode 3. You don't want to miss it.